Hello, Chris from My Stamp Lady. I'm so glad you're here to stamp with me today. Today I'm going to be using the Dragonfly Dreams bundle, which comes with this stamp set here called Dragonfly Dreams and the detailed Dragonflies thinlits. This set can be found on page 26 of the Occasions catalog, which is available right now through May 31st, 2017. Now, if you ordered from me in the past year, you should have received one of those in the mail. If you didn't, be sure to let me know. If you'd like to request one, go to my blog at mystamplady.com and request a catalog. I'm also going to be using the Awesomely Artistic stamp set from the annual catalog. And we are going to be doing copper accents today. There are quite a few copper products available right now, so I'm using the copper foil and the copper embossing powder with this card. So to start off, I am going to first cut my Dragonfly. So let's pull that set back in here. I'm using this thinlit here, and I'm going to just place that on my piece of copper foil. And with this die, I would really recommend that you use the precision plate for the big shot. So your sandwich would be your tabs all shut with the multi-purpose platform, or you could be using the thin die adapter with the new platform. Your precision plate, your copper foil, and your die, and then an acrylic plate over that. And let's run that through the Big Shot. Okay, so I've pulled in my Big Shot die brush, and I'm helping, that will help pop out this Dragonfly. There we go. I want to keep this around because I'm going to use some more of that later, the excess there. Let's keep going with the Big Shot brush because that will help pop out all the little pieces and pop the Dragonfly out from the die. Okay, let's see if I have any pieces left. Nope, I don't. So there's my Dragonfly, and I can set that aside. Now I'm going to stamp a background for that Dragonfly, and because I am using a photopolymer set, I'm going to put my Stampin' Pierce pad in there, and that will give a little more cushion to my stamping. Start with this dotted image from the stamp set, and we're going to emboss that in copper. So the first thing I want to do is with my embossing buddy, I'm going to rub that on there, and then with the Versamark ink, that embossing buddy is going to prevent fingerprints and just anything that's on that paper from grabbing embossing powder where I don't want it. And let's stamp this over the bottom here. Pull in a little coffee filter to catch my excess powder, and this is the copper powder. Sprinkle that over that. I like to sprinkle it twice, sometimes it gets a little better coverage. Tap off any excess. And then I'm just going to heat set that with the heat tool. So I like to warm up my heat tool, and then once it's warmed up, I will heat the powder until it melts. You don't want to overheat it. As soon as that's shiny, you know that it's melted enough and you have heated your powder. Now I'm taking this image from the Awesomely Artistic, and I don't need that little piece right now, so I'm going to remove that. And I'm using mint macaron. And with the mint macaron, I don't want this full strength, I want it lighter. So I'm going to stamp it off on my scratch paper and then just stamp the splatters for the background here. Okay. Now I can layer that onto a piece of mint macaron that I have sized 1/8 inch larger. I'm just mounting that onto a 2 1/8 by 3 1/8 inch mint macaron background and putting dimensionals on the back side because eventually I'm going to want to pop that up from my background. There we go. I have a piece of 5/8 by 3 1/4 inch piece of mint macaron, and I'm going to emboss the Enjoy Your Special Day sentiment on there. And so let's pull that embossing buddy back in and rub that. That's the first thing you want to do. With the Versamark, let's ink up that sentiment. And I'm just going to stamp that in the center. And pour my powder just like I did last time. Let's pour that copper powder over that. and then I'll heat set again. Okay, once that's heat set and cooled, I don't want to mar up my embossing that I just did with the copper powder. Once that's heat set and cooled, what I'm doing is I'm taking in my triple banner punch. Now this is too narrow to actually punch with using the guides, so I'm just going to line it up so that it's in the center and that both edges of that cardstock are lined up on the angled sides. So like that, and then I get my notched end, and I'll repeat that on the other side. Okay, there we go. So now I have a flag with my sentiment. Now it's time to do the background. So I have a piece of 5.5 by 8.5 inches thick whisper white scored at 4.25 inches and folded in half. And this is what I'm going to do my background on. And I'm also going to be stamping this off also, meaning that I don't want my ink full strength. So let's pull back in that mint macaron, and I have this big floral image from the Awesomely Artistic. Take that out of there. You could probably leave it under there. I like it a little better with it off of there. Move this a little bit. Okay, let's stamp that off. And so I don't have it full strength, I have it a little bit lighter. Stamp that big, large set of leaves, and repeat again, stamping it off and stamping it down here. Now the next two images that I stamp, I want to stamp at full strength. So what I'm going to do, first of all, is stamp this image. Now it's just like a lined image. One thing I've done is I've trimmed off those edges, the little overhang, so it's cut right up to the image. That way it makes it a little bit easier to see and line up where I'm stamping this. So I'm going to start that at full strength about right there, and again at full strength, and this time I can line up my image because I've trimmed that down. There we go. And it's not perfect, but that's okay. This is a collage-y style here. So then the smaller fern, and let's stamp that there, and then the larger fern right up above it. So we'll go right in there. Okay. Now I'm going to put on this piece here, so removing those dimensional backs so that it has a little bit of lift from the background, and we'll just position that right there. I'm going to use a mini glue dot to mount my dragonfly, the copper dragonfly, in the center, and position that about, let's put that about right there. Okay, so now with the sentiment, I'm going to use a little smaller piece of the dimensional on the other side so that it will be even. So let's put that on the left side. Let's put that dimensional there, and a mini glue dot on the other side because that's going to be flush with the part that it overhangs. Take that off and slide that under there. If you want, you can add a little bit of glue right underneath. My glue open here. Add a little bit of glue, the fine tip glue here underneath to stick down that tail. Otherwise, you could just let it be. Okay, so then with the fine tip glue, I like to hold it for a minute so it sets up. Okay, so now to finish off this card, I'm going to add a little bit of foil down in the corner with copper, and I'm going to make it kind of dome a little. So what I'm going to do is take two 1/8 inch just round punch outs. Just going to punch those out. There we go. And I'm just using that scrap from the rest of my foil. That got caught, so let's take that out of there. Okay, and flip them over. And I'm going to add some of the fine tip glue, and I want to add it so that it makes kind of a dome. Now this is going to take a while to dry, much longer than I want to wait to finish up this video. So once I get that, there we go. I'm going to, I don't know, maybe an hour or a couple hours to dry, but I want to leave kind of a dome on there. So I've added that little, like a bubble of the fine tip glue, and once it dries, grabbing some that I did ahead of time here, you can see, well, it might be hard to see on the film, but there's a little bit of dimension to that. And I'm going to add those down here on the corner bottom of my card front. So we'll just add those like that to bring a little more of the copper down in the corner. So let's add a little bit of fine tip glue. That down. So I have that copper accent down in the corner to draw the eye down to that left corner. If you have any questions about what I've done here, don't hesitate to contact me, Chris@mystamplady.com. All of the directions are found on my website at mystamplady.com and the supplies in my online store at shopwithmystamplady.com. Thanks a lot for stamping with me today.